Hi, this is Bonnie from Lavinia World, and today I'm going to show you how to stamp another card or topper that I have inked. This is the second one that video that I have made, and this time you're going to learn how you can make a mistake, and in the end you can change it out. So I'm kind of like telling you this after I've made the mistake, so I can tell you at the end, towards the end of this, I'm going to tell you how you can fix something that you've stamped. You know, many times you have stamped an image and you go to maybe restamp it and it totally moves and it's blurred. I did that with this in this video, and at the end I'm going to show you how I fixed it. So I hope you stay and watch it to the end so you can see how you can repair something that you have stamped and that it moved or whatever, and you think you have to throw it away. I have an alternative, so I hope that you stick around to the end so you can see what you can do. So let's get started. Alright, so this is my second design of what I would like to do. Again, this is what the first one looked like, and then this is going to be the second design. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you the stamps that I am using. I am using Sea of Fairy Make-A-Wish Sentiment, and that's LAV533. I'm going to be using Large Path LAV246, and then this one is Dragonstone Castle LAV533, and then the dragon is LAV557. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the name, but Mideela. And then LAV299 Star Cluster. So again, I'm looking at this and how the first thing I'm going to stamp in the background, and that's how I'm going to do it. The background first, and then go forward, and some things will be clear embossed and some things won't be. Let's get that set up really fast. So the sentiment is going to go first, and I am going to be using Morning Mist, and that is going to be on the bottom. And in this case, I am not going to have the whole sentiment on there because I do not want it to overlap with the stars up above. And so that's going to work fine, just like that. So, and again, I'm going to be using the Morning Mist. I don't want to take away too much from what I inked in the background, but I want it to complement it, because you can still see what I did in the background. Alright, so the next thing that would be stamped would be the star clusters, and they again would be stamped in the same Morning Mist. And I wanted to set this up so that the dragon, for the most part, would be in the part that has the biggest opening. So I'm rotating that around in the moon, and also again I'm going to check that out with the dragon. So because I'm going to be stamping the dragon on top of there, I have decided that I'm only going to partially emboss the stars. I'm going to try to make sure I don't get any embossing powder on the stars towards the bottom where the dragon would be. And I'm using, like I said, Morning Mist. That's what I wanted. Now I'm going to be using again the bridal tinsel. I think it's called, yeah, the embossing or the tinsel that's bridal. So I'm going to try to only get it. I'm going to show you just a second. I'm going to move that over because I'm kind of like doing this fussy bit about embossing, putting the embossing powder on. So I wanted you to see. So I'm going to leave, like I said, this part down here open without any embossing. And I'm just going to do that top part. You can see that. That's all I'm going to do. The bottom parts are not going to have the embossing powder on it. So I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss that right now. So I have the stars embossed, and as you can see, the ones towards the bottom are a little bit darker because they don't have the embossing powder on them, but these are at the top. But I had to do it that way because I wanted to not inhibit the dragon as I put him on. And you can see that's the plan for him to go on so that he's not really hitting the embossing part so much. So I'm going to get him set up, make sure I have that a little bit better. Yeah, okay. These acrylic things that come with your stamps are really helpful to get things set up. So I am going to stamp him in the morning mist again because I have the I have the castle that I want to be darker because it's going to be closer to the front. So I'll end up stamping the dragon twice to get that a little bit darker, but not as dark as the Nocturne. All right, he needed more ink anyway, because he did go over a little bit of the stars, but I think that'll be okay. We'll get that to work. All right. I'm not always sure about this excess ink on the side, if it's going to show, so I try to rub it off with my fingers. Sometimes then I have to watch my fingers because then I touch the card and I end up getting ink on the card or the top. All right, let's see. Put a little bit more pressure to where that wing is. Yeah, the parts that are not showing up right there are because of the stars. Like I told you, when you go to stamp on top of embossing, it's not going to stay. We'll give that a little bit more, see what happens. Okay, that's how we're going to go with it. And then I'm going to go ahead and put that embossing powder. Yeah, I'm going to put the embossing powder. I'm trying to make sure that that's what I want to do. If I want to add a little bit of black, I think I'm going to add a little bit of black to that wing just to see if it will adhere to it. And just the wing part. I've not done this part before, but I'm just going to add it to the wing. So you have to be a little bit fussy with that, with the inking. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that's really not going to... Again, like I said, it's the embossing that's underneath because I embossed the stars. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. But I am going to go ahead, just because I want to make sure I've got enough ink on the dragon, I'm going to ink the whole thing back up. But it was worth giving that a try so you could see how that works yourself. And another thing to consider, you could always brush the embossing powder off where the wing might be before. You can always test that out also with that acrylic sample. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and emboss that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have just embossed the dragon, and it's really kind of interesting because it doesn't look that bad. It just looks like he's got a little bit of texture in his wings. You can't almost tell that it's the stars. I really kind of like it. Anyway, so now I'm setting up the castle. And I keep wanting to call it dragon because it's called Dragon Stone Castle. But I'm setting up the castle so that it kind of works overall when you look at it, the design. And that's where I want that to be in conjunction to the dragon. So again, for this one though, I'm using the Nocturne ink. And then I will emboss that with a clear embossing powder. I really love this castle. It has really pretty details to it. It's my favorite. I'm gonna get that off of there. See a little bit of ink. Okay. And then underneath the castle, I'm going to be adding the stone steps, but not very much of them, just enough to go to the bottom of the design. Let's see how that looked. Yep, I need a little bit more ink on that. Not much. Like I said, this is the good thing about having the stamping platform, so that you can get a second stamp if you miss some of your image. All right, see if that showed up. Yep, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna go and heat emboss that. Okay, so I'm going to be adding the stones to the bottom, and I'm going to be using Morning Mist. And I only am going to need to stamp the top part of this. And there was something that I needed to tell you what happened with that last one. When I stamped the Dragon Castle, you probably noticed it did move over slightly. And so I've got a little bit of a blur there, even though it did do that. I'm not sure. I think I'm going to add a little bit more of the Nocturne. I want those stones to be a little bit more prominent. Hopefully I don't get another little blur here. Nope. So I'm going to go ahead and emboss that, and I'll be right back. When I stamped this image using my Misty, the paper moved slightly and gave me a double image. And I had the intention of using it as was, as I stamped it. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to show an alternative to when you do double stamp, instead of trashing it, how you can possibly save it and do something different with it. So what I decided to do was pull out some of my metal dies, and I use this as a guide to give me an idea of what I can do to change out a mistake that I might make. Instead of trashing everything, let's see what I can do to change it out. In another video, I have showed you how I have removed something and used it on another card. In this case, I'm not going to trash the whole card, but I'm not going to save my double stamped image that I made. So what I did was I placed this down over the top of it just to get an idea. I could not actually die cut it because I wanted to keep the edge of my moon, and the only way I knew how to do that was to hand cut it. So I set this down and I drew up a pencil on the inside of the die, not the outside. The inside, it doesn't matter. You could do the outside if that's the way that you wanted it, because you have two choices. And because I wasn't going to save this, I could have just poked a hole in the middle and just start cutting, but I actually poked a little hole down here at the edge, and then I cut all the way around it and took that piece out, and then that's what I ended up with. So then the next thing you have to do is try to match this up as best you can with what you can to replace it, which I still wanted to use. I kept a little bit of the bottom of the castle down here, the kind of like the stepping stone into it, but not the stepping stones, and decided to go ahead and re-stamp my image. Now, what I did is I stamped this image first, and then I went back and I put all the ink around it. I wanted to make sure that I could match it up as best I could. That's why I did it that way, to what was already there. Now, here's the deal. If you recall, I always tell you to use clear embossing powder on top of your images. There's a reason why I do that, and this is a perfect one. When I went to ink over this entire image, because I embossed over it, I was able to wipe back any of the ink that's set on top of this image. Now, how I did that, because you have to be careful, because the ink in the background is water-based, and if you get water on any part of this, it's going to show and it's going to change. Sometimes it doesn't matter because you want that distressed look, but in this case I did not. So I used a Q-tip swab very carefully, and I just lightly wiped that residue from the ink away, and then I have an image that looks just like, you know, I stamped it, you know, on top of the ink. So the other thing that I had to do to be careful with was I wanted to match up as best I could what was already on this card. And so I placed that down exactly where I knew that I was going to want it. And I had to match up the parts that are on the top with the castle underneath. And then I just figured out where that was, and I inked it down, and I used my blending tool. And because I could do that once I start, I knew the level, and I could keep going back and forth to see about where that was. Now, no, it's not perfect, and that's okay, because I want now for it to look different. I don't want it to be the same, and that's the whole point. When you go to change something out, to be deliberate, to make it look different, like that was the intention. I'm telling you that's what I'm doing, and you know this is what I did. But when you go to make a card, sometimes it makes it look, I want to say, you could say a lemon that looks bad actually comes out to be one of your better designs because of the mistake you made. And that's what I'm trying to teach you in this video, is that you can, instead of throwing things away, come up with ideas to make it look even better than what you thought it did to begin with. So mistakes are sometimes a good thing, because it's how you can learn to do something new. So that's what I'm going to be doing with this project. I am still going to be putting this on an altered box, or I'm going to alter a box, I should say. But at the same time, I wanted to show you how you could still use something you weren't really happy with. You can see a big difference. You know, I thought at first, it's not a big deal, I'm just going to use the double, but you can see there's a big difference between the two. I mean, it's such a beautiful stamp. So for the first time in a long time, I'm actually going to trash something, and that's this. I am not going to reuse this for something else. It just doesn't give justice to what this stamp really is. So that's what I'm going to do. I wanted to give you a little heads up as I am working on this project and how you can actually change things out. I hope you enjoyed that, what I just got through showing you. And I would like to remind you that Lavinia World YouTube channel has tutorials every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And sometimes there's some extra ones you might be able to pop in and watch. I would also like to invite you to subscribe, and also all the things that I've used in this video will be listed below in the description. Thanks for stopping by.